Rosie was very ill in the hospital room. Chemotherapy left her weak and vulnerable to infections. I was allowed to visit her, but only in full protective clothing and a mask. Rosie caught a cold, and the consultant oncologist insisted that Rosie remain in quarantine until she recovered. It was Tuesday afternoon. I managed to complete all my work. My boss, John, was a real gem. He lost his wife to cancer a few years ago and knew what we were going through. He gave me a lot of concessions so that I could be close to Rosie. I arrived at the Hamilton ward and spoke to the head nurse, who told me, "Rosie is feeling a little better today. Her cold seems to be going away. We hope to start the next course of treatment next week as planned." I thanked her and put on my gown and mask, as I had done at every visit for the past week. I hoped that she would be able to return home soon, but that seemed unlikely at the moment. My name is Peter White. I'm 52 years old, 6 feet tall, powerfully built, weighing 180 pounds. I try to go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week and run every day so that I can live longer than my father, who died at the age of 62 from a massive heart attack. High blood pressure and heart disease run in my family. I quit smoking 8 years ago. At my last annual checkup, I was taken off my blood pressure medications and given a clean bill of health. The exercises had done their job. Rosie is 15 years older than me. She is 67, 5'6" and tall. Her beautiful long black hair has disappeared due to cancer treatment, but her dark brown eyes still sparkle. She lost a lot of weight during this brutal treatment. She used to weigh 210 pounds and always struggled with her weight. She now weighs 120 pounds. This disease has reduced her weight below her desired weight. Life can be so cruel. Rosie and I met at a local nightclub on a Wednesday night for a 60s, 70s, and 80s party. Locals call it Granny Night. I was 22 years old and had been without a girlfriend for several months. I didn't plan to go out that evening, but my colleagues Richie and Willie talked me into it. Late in the evening, they both disappeared. Either they found someone or they left without bothering to tell me. I was getting ready to leave as I had to work the next day when I saw her alone at the bar. A vision with black hair. I approached her with my best gait and asked her to dance. I expected a refusal. She said, "Yes, I'd like to dance." And we danced until the club closed at 12:30 at night. It was National No Smoking Day, and the club did not smoke that night. When we came out together, we both said, "I'm dying to smoke." This made us laugh. We both lit cigarettes and talked as we walked towards the taxi rank. I offered to share a taxi, take her first, and then take her to my apartment. When we arrived at her place, she asked, "Do you want to come in for coffee?" Her eyes were shining. How could I refuse? I paid for a taxi, and we went into her small apartment. She made us coffee and turned on some light music. We sat and talked, and neither of us noticed how time passed. Then it happened. We kissed, and it was electric. Soon our hands were everywhere, and we were taking off our clothes. Skin on the carpet in front of an open fire, we embraced and were soon making sweet love. We lay there in front of her fire on the carpet, temporarily merged into one being. Nothing else mattered. The outside world ceased to exist. At that moment, we were connected for life. A few minutes later, we both looked at the time. It was already past 5 in the morning. In a panic, we quickly cleaned ourselves up and got dressed. I needed to be at work at 07:30 and Rosie needed to catch the train at 6. She called a taxi and asked for 2. She needed to get to the train, and I needed to go home to change clothes. As we said goodbye, we exchanged numbers and promised to meet on a date. We dated for 3 months, made love every time they were together. We spent every night together, either at her place or at mine. One evening, Rosie said, "This is stupid. Why don't we live together?" We both sold our apartments and bought a new 2-room house on the outskirts of the city. We had been living together for 6 months when I took Rosie to dinner at Enrico's, the best Italian restaurant in town. At the end of a wonderful dinner, we ordered coffee, and then I got down on one knee and asked, "Will you agree to become my wife?" The entire restaurant waited for her answer. what seemed like an eternity before she answered. Then she smiled and said yes. The hall exploded with applause. I put the ring on her. It was a family heirloom passed down from my great-grandmother, and it fit perfectly. Of course, I adjusted it in advance. We hugged and kissed passionately until someone shouted, "Get a room." The restaurant erupted in laughter. We got married 3 months later. Church wedding, Rosie in a beautiful big white dress and me in my best suit. It was a great event for friends and family with a great reception afterwards. We honeymooned in the Maldives, 14 wonderful days relaxing and sunbathing during the day and making love at night. 9 months later, we were blessed with a daughter, Elizabeth Rose. Our little family went on as usual. We had the usual problems like any family, stupid quarrels over insignificant things. We had a real crisis 12 years ago. Rosie became withdrawn and depressed. Our sex life suffered greatly. To be honest, she was never the same. It was so bad that I started making plans for divorce. But when I thought about Lizzie, who was just a teenager, how do you explain to a 13-year-old girl that the two most important people in her life no longer love each other? I decided to stay and hope that Rosie would be with me again. Rosie started to come out of it after a few months, but I never felt like we were as connected again as before. We celebrated our silver anniversary a week before the devastating diagnosis of aggressive lymphoma. Rose found some lumps in her armpit and went to see her GP, which wasn't easy with the NHS, but she got an emergency appointment. Within a few days, she was referred to a specialist. He was optimistic that it was discovered in time. He started chemotherapy 2 weeks later. Rosie underwent 3 rounds of chemotherapy, and with her immune system weakened, she caught a cold which landed her in hospital. She was depressed. I visited Rosie every day, and this time she looked a little better. As far as possible after severe cancer treatment and in the last stages of a runny nose. She looked at me with her big brown eyes and said, "Peter, we need to talk." I swallowed, fearing the worst. I need to get this off my chest and make peace in case I can't beat this. I don't know if I'll survive, and there's something you deserve to know. My heart was pounding and my stomach was in knots. I had no idea what would happen, but I knew it would be bad. She continued, "Please let me finish before you react." I reluctantly agreed. And then what she said to me made my world move away from me. She said, "I need to confess. I cheated on you, and I can't take that with me to death. I need to confess my sin." I didn't have a chance to react. Okay, whether we beat cancer or not, we both accepted it. Never in my worst nightmare did I expect my significant other to break my heart too. I put together the answer. Why, who, and when. Tears streamed down my face. I felt my lunch trying to leave me, and my blood pressure was rising dangerously. I ran out of the room to the toilet opposite and emptied my stomach. I took a few minutes to compose myself before returning to Rosie. I felt a new emotion rise, and it was anger. I let her do it. "Why did you do this to me?" She timidly replied, "I'm really sorry. I just wanted to try something exciting and new. I never meant to hurt you." "What?" I exclaimed. "Damn it, Rosie. Neither of us were virgins when we met. That's just bullshit." I was overcome with rage, and I barked. "So when did this happen, and with whom?" She didn't say anything, so I asked again, louder this time. The nurse came and told me to either calm down or leave. I apologized and lowered my voice. I asked again, "When did this happen, and with whom?" She was crying, and I could see that Rosie didn't want to tell me. I asked again, "When and with whom?" I looked at her and growled, "Now." Through her sobs, she managed to quietly say, "Mike Smythe, 12 years ago." Through clenched teeth, I simply said, "I'll kill him," and I got up and left. I threw the robe and mask on the floor and ran to the car. I sat in the car and just cried for probably about an hour. My cell phone rang several times, each time Rosie called, and each time I just canceled the call, and then the messages came. "I'm really sorry. Please forgive me. Please come back. I need you. I need to explain." I ignored them all and drove the broken man home. I could not believe it. Fucking Mike Smythe, her former boss at C-Tech UK Limited, is our supposed friend. I immediately decided that he would get a slap. I thought he and Sarah, his wife, were our friends. I needed to hurt him. I needed revenge, but not tonight. If I had acted, I would have immediately found myself in a cell awaiting trial on murder charges. The next morning, I called work and asked for the rest of the week off for personal reasons. My boss, John, said, "Take your time." He must have assumed that Rosie had made a turn. I thanked him and told him I would be back on Monday. What the hell was I going to do? My significant other and lover dropped a bomb on me. She broke my heart. I needed to confront Mike. I thought about going to his office, but then I remembered that he had changed jobs a few years ago, and I didn't know where or if he still worked. So I went to his house. When I arrived, there was no one at home. I sat in the car and waited. At 15:30, Sarah returned home. She saw my car and came over. Sarah was a gorgeous woman my age, blonde with a beautiful face and big blue eyes, taller than Rosie, with a beautiful figure and long legs. We hadn't seen each other for several years. She immediately recognized me and invited me in. She saw that I was upset and angry. She asked, "What brings you here, Pete?" "It just came out without warning. Did you know Mike slept with Rosie?" Sarah looked stunned, but once she collected herself, she nodded and said, "Yes, sorry, Pete. I told Sarah that Rosie has cancer, and she told me yesterday that she cheated on me with Mike." Sarah sat down next to me, hugged me, and said, "I don't think she told you the whole story, Pete." She hugged me again. I just felt angry and confused. Just as Sarah was about to tell me, my cell phone rang. It was Rosie. She was crying and begging me to come in and see her. I just said, "No, not today. You hurt me too much. I can't see you, not today." As I ended the call, I heard Rosie sob. I put my phone on silent mode. I pulled myself together and said, "Okay, Sarah, tell me what I don't know." "Remember the burn dinner we had here about 12 years ago?" she said. I nodded yes. I remembered. "Well, that night you went out to party with a couple of other guests while Mike and I were chatting with Rosie. She told us that you two were talking about swapping partners." "Wow, Sarah," I said. "She told you about the fantastic conversation we had one night in bed after making love." "I'm so sorry, Pete," Sarah said. "Rosie knew Mike and I had done it before, and she said you and she were ready for it. She was going to tell you that Mike and I were up for it too." Sarah continued, "We planned for you both to come over next Saturday. Mike will have Rosie and I will have you. First separately and then together on the same day." "Well, that's fucking news to me," I said angrily. "Do you remember what happened when you arrived? My parents were here and we all had coffee before they left. Then I invited you to go outside to smoke." "Yes, I remember you tried to kiss me," I answered. Sarah continued, "I was going to take you to a little house in the garden, and we were going to make love. But when I tried to kiss you, you pulled away and asked what I thought I was doing, that you were married, and not I'm not going to cheat on Rosie. At that moment, I knew that Mike and Rosie had deceived us. It was obvious that you knew nothing about the agreement, and by then it was too late, and they were already done. I gave you a tour of the garden to kill some time." "What the heck?" I exclaimed. Sarah then asked me, "I need to know, if you had known about the wavering agreement, would you have made love to me?" I thought for a moment. "Yes, I would. I thought you were rotten." Sarah just smiled. I told Sarah about this. Until this weekend, Rosie and I made love several times a week. Then suddenly, out of the blue, the sex between us disappeared. Then, after about 6 months, she wanted sex again, but it was never the same. The spark was gone. The blood drained from my face, and I simply said, "It just occurred to me." After that incident, Rosie began to come home late. She told me that she stopped at a roadside place to take a nap on the way from Aberdeen because she was tired from driving. Instead of being home by 7 p.m., she would return after 8. Sarah simply said, "Oh my God, Mike said he had to stay late working on a big project." This news was new to Sarah too. I saw that she was starting to get angry too. I heard someone enter the house and the door opened. It was Mike. He said, "Sarah, I'm home." I woke up. When he entered the room, I hit him right in the face. He fell like a sack of potatoes. I just said, "This is because you slept with my wife." I kicked him and said, "And this is because you destroyed my marriage." Sarah just looked at him and said, "You deserve it, Mike, you cheater." Sarah hit him too. He lay in the fetal position, gasping for breath. When I left, Sarah followed me out, took my phone and called her number from it. Her phone rang and she hung up. She said, "Call me, we need to work this out." She kissed me on the cheek. When I left, I checked my phone. There were a lot of missed calls from Rosie. I called her back, and she answered the second call. Rosie cried, saying, "I'm so sorry, please forgive me." I said, "I'll come over tomorrow afternoon. We need to talk and sort this all out." She just sobbed, "I'm so sorry." I ended the call. That evening, I did something very stupid. I found my very expensive bottle of Glenfiddich 30 years old that my father gave me before he died and drank it until I passed out. The next morning, I woke up with a terrible hangover. My stomach flipped over and I vomited. I was still hungover and now I was hungry. I went to the local cafe and ate a full English breakfast and drank a gallon of coffee. By 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I began to feel almost human. Now it was time to meet Rosie and find out the whole truth. I arrived at the hospital at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I went to Rosie's room, but she wasn't there. I found the nurse and asked where Rosie was. She didn't know, but she promised to find out. Half an hour later, the nurse found me and told me Rosie would be back soon, but didn't tell me where she had been. "How much to wait?" I asked. "She'll be back soon," the nurse said. I sat there like an extra guest at a wedding for over an hour. When Rosie finally returned, it was already well after 4. An orderly brought her in, and a nurse helped her into bed. I told the nurse, "Please don't disturb us. We have personal matters." The nurse looked at me blankly and left. I stood up and closed the door behind her. Angrily, I asked, "Where were you?" I was waiting. "I saw a counselor and then went to the chapel," she replied. I needed answers, so I got to work straight away. "I met with Sarah yesterday. She really helped me put it all together. Would you like to tell me the truth about your affair with Mike?" I asked. What little color she had on her face faded, and she began to cry, tears dripping onto her pajamas. She didn't say anything. "Okay, if you don't want to talk, I'll tell you what I already know. You told Mike and Sarah at their dinner on Burns night that we were discussing partner swaps. So?" Rosie answered weakly, "Yes." "Then you arranged for us to be at their house the following Saturday, where you and Mike and I and Sarah had sex. So?" She simply nodded. "When were you going to tell me about this?" Rosie just looked down and didn't say anything. "You weren't going to let me and Sarah be together, so?" She simply nodded. "Okay, Rosie, why? Why did you go and sleep with Mike? Why did you keep me in the dark? You embarrassed Sarah and me. You knew my views on betrayal. You knew that I would reject it. If you had talked to me, I would have agreed to it. Consensual sex is not cheating. Going behind my back is treason." Finally, Rosie spoke. "Sorry, Pete. Mike charmed me. I just wanted him." "Did you continue to have it after that day?" I asked, desperately trying to restrain myself. "No, I swear," she said. I just screamed, "You liar, you fucking bitch. You slept with him for at least 3 months after that." "How do I know this? I will tell you. You came home late almost every night, using the lame excuse that you needed to take a nap on the way from Aberdeen. You gave me pathetic sex on the weekends, lying there like a cold fish, and the other nights you just rolled over and said you were tired. And this continued until your contract with CTEC ended. It's funny that Sarah said that Mike was supposedly working late on a big project at the same time. So now tell me the truth." Rosie said, "I'm so sorry it got out of hand. It was only supposed to be one time, but after that we kept seeing each other after work until we got caught in his office. That's when I was fired. Why involve Sarah and me? I was going to ask you if you wanted to try a swap with Mike and Sarah, but then I couldn't bear the thought of you being with another woman. When we arrived, they thought everything was fine. So Sarah took you outside, thinking you were in the know and you would have sex with her while Mike was with me. I stopped her. Wait, Rosie, I really don't know what to do next. I'm so angry and confused. You took what you wanted, but you deprived me and Sarah of it, and then you deprived me of all tenderness for months after that, and let's be honest, nothing has changed between us since then. You said the other day that you wanted something new and exciting. What the hell do you think we were trying to do in those months leading up to this? By this point, I was beside myself with anger and could hardly contain myself. I didn't want to make a scene in the hospital. Angrily, I said, I need to leave, I need to think, I need to decide what to do. Don't mess with me. As I left, my anger got the better of me. I just turned to her and screamed, "Bitch." I saw her cry. I didn't mean to be cruel. Poor Rosie was fighting the worst of illnesses, but I was angry and broken. I slammed the door and left. The nurse looked at me with disgust. 2 days later, on Saturday, I received a call from the hospital saying Rosie was well enough to go home and asking me to come and pick her up. Now I had a problem. The woman I loved and hated at the same time, potentially terminally ill, could return home. I didn't want to be in the same room with her. I decided to be a man and reluctantly picked Rosie up and took her home. I was kind, did not say or do anything that could make the situation worse. I quietly told her how upset and heartbroken I was, and that I was going to stay at a local hotel for a few nights to figure out what to do next. I went to pack my things. She begged me to stay and talk, but I couldn't. My thoughts were in turmoil. I have never felt so many conflicting emotions at once. We both cried when I kissed her forehead and said, "Goodbye, I'll call you." And I left. On Monday, I went to work. To be honest, I was of little use. While I was trying to work, a plan matured in my head. I didn't want to hurt Rosie anymore. She was very sick and needed me. I couldn't forgive her, but I still loved her. What I really wanted was to get back at Mike. I left work at 4 o'clock, checked out of the hotel, and went home. Rosie was sleeping on the sofa when I arrived. I prepared 2 cups of tea and gently woke her up. "Rosie, we need to talk," I said. "Rosie, I still love you. I can't say I don't hate you at the moment. You broke my heart. I have made a decision." Her face darkened and she began to sob. "I don't want a divorce." "Wait," I said. "I want to get to the bottom of this. I still love you. You are still my wife and the mother of our daughter. I will not leave you to face this disease alone. We will try to live as normal, and I will try to find a way to forgive you." Rosie smiled, a smile I hadn't seen since the diagnosis. I said, "But there is one big but. I need to get revenge on Mike. This may hurt Rosie, but I want time with Sarah, and I want Mike to see this. I want him to suffer the same way I did. I hope you understand." Rosie kissed me and said, "I understand, my dear. I know that I hurt you, and I am very sorry for what I did then. It hurts knowing you have to do this, but I understand. But please, I don't want to know when you'll do it." I prepared a light dinner. Rosie wasn't very hungry, and to be honest, neither was I, but we both tried to eat a little. After dinner, I locked myself in the bathroom and called Sarah. I told her that we needed to discuss something and asked to meet the next evening. I spent the rest of the evening just holding Rosie. She was so weak and had 2 more rounds of chemotherapy to go through. When she fell asleep, I put her to bed and lay down next to her. I didn't sleep, just listened to Rosie breathe quietly until the morning alarm clock. How can you be angry at someone so sick and weak? The next evening, I met Sarah in the bar of the Imperial Hotel. I ordered us a drink and told her my plan. When I finished, she smiled and asked, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I didn't answer. I just kissed her as passionately and wildly as I could, and she responded in kind. Sarah later sent me a list of things she needed for our meeting. I went online and bought everything I needed. I ordered delivery to the office, not home. Life went on for the next couple of weeks. Rosie had another round of chemotherapy, and it really knocked her out of whack. I took time off to be with her. I hoped that the next course would be the last. We didn't talk about her betrayal. We tried to just move on with our lives. Finally, the day has come. I told Rosie I was leaving for the night on a business trip. I saw that she did not believe me. I very rarely stayed overnight for work. She knew what was about to happen. I saw how Rosie tried to hide her tears. I packed my travel bag and went to work. I had previously arranged for Lizzie to come home and look after Mom for the night. I didn't tell Lizzie what was going on, but she knew something was wrong. After work, I arrived at Sarah's house around 7:30 p.m. Sarah answered the door wearing a red corset, panties, stockings, and 4-inch red stilettos. I asked where Mike was. She replied, sleeping as planned. She gave him sleeping pills at lunchtime, and he was unconscious. We went into the bedroom, and there he was. I managed to get Mike's lifeless body onto a chair. There were purchased items in my bag. I secured his ankles with straps to the chair legs and his hands behind his back with new leather cuffs. He was gagged and blindfolded. Sarah splashed cold water on his face, and he began to come to his senses. When he realized that he could not move, he began to resist. He tried to scream, but the gag got in the way. I removed the blindfold from his eyes, and Sarah stood in front of him holding a steel cage for his private part. This was serious equipment. There was horror in his eyes. She turned the key and locked it. Sarah emphasized that she hung the key on a gold chain around her neck. She looked him in the eye and said, "If you behave, maybe I'll free you someday." Sarah smiled and turned to me. She kissed me, a long, passionate kiss. Our tongues danced, exploring each other's mouths. We started having sex in front of Mike. I went to the bathroom and took a towel. I dried myself. She went to her bedside table and took out a dog collar and leash and handed them to me. I walked over to Mike, put the collar on him, and handed the leash to Sarah. She led him out of the room. I heard a door nearby open and close, and then the lock click. Sarah returned, and we showered together, scrubbing and cleaning each other. Sarah kissed me and asked, "Are you staying the night?" "Of course," I replied. She gave me a robe, and we went into the living room for a drink. I poured myself an exquisite single malt whiskey from Mike's expensive collection, and Sarah took a glass of red wine. She opened the box on the table and said, "Please help yourself." It contained fine Cuban cigars. What a night, a beautiful woman satisfied, Mike's expensive whiskey, and a damn good cigar. After a moment I asked, "This will be a one-time thing, right? We had fun and Mike got his comeuppance." She said, "Of course, but we still have the night ahead." We chatted for a while, enjoying our drinks and cigars, until Sarah said, "Let's go to bed." We made love several more times that night. The next morning we had sex again. I took a shower later. I didn't want to smell like sex and Sarah when I got back to Rosie's house. It wouldn't be fair. Before leaving, I asked Sarah, "How long are you going to keep Mike in the cage?" She just smiled and didn't answer. We kissed for the last time and parted forever. Well, almost forever. I returned home that evening. Rosie was making pasta carbonara. Lizzie was still there, and I hugged them both. Rosie asked, "Did you have a good business trip?" I simply nodded and said, "Not bad." Then we sat down to dinner as a family for the first time in months. Rosie and I didn't mention Mike and Sarah again. 2 weeks later, Rosie had her final round of chemotherapy. He really freaked her out. 3 weeks passed before she felt well enough to return to normal life. 6 weeks after this course, I went with Rosie to the hospital for a checkup. The consultant, Mr. Peters, was very pleased and said the cancer had shrunk significantly. He said he wanted to see her in a month. Every day, Rosie grew stronger and became more like herself. We talked more and gradually became closer. At the next checkup, Mr. Peters beamed when he said the cancer was gone and Rosie was in remission. We both cried and hugged. He warned that the cancer might return, but hoped that if Rosie lived a healthy lifestyle and ate right, everything would be fine. After a few weeks, Rosie's hair began to grow, and she grew stronger every day. I suggested renewing our vows and going on a repeat honeymoon. Rosie kissed me more passionately than she had kissed me in a long time. That night we made loud, wild love. Our spark is back. 6 months later, on a beach in the Maldives, we were renewing our vows, our only family guests being Lizzie and her boyfriend. Those gathered were our new holiday friends. Before the ceremony began, I whispered in Rose's ear, "I love you. You are forgiven completely and forever." She replied, "And you are forgiven too, my dear. Thank you." That night we made love like we did on our honeymoon. A few weeks ago, I ran into Sarah and Mike again by chance. I was in a cafe on the way between jobs. I was working on my laptop in the corner when Sarah and Mike walked in. I looked up and there she was, smiling at me. I stood up and we greeted each other with a hug and a kiss on the cheek. She asked if she could sit and I nodded. She sat down and asked what I wanted to drink. "Medium latte with skim milk, please," I smiled. Sarah sent Mike to order coffee. We exchanged pleasantries until Mike returned with the drinks. He was about to sit down when Sarah told him to sit somewhere else. Mike hurried away like a scolded child. "Are you still keeping him in a cage?" I asked. "I found out about 2 other affairs since our last conversation, so he won't be released any time soon," she laughed. "How's Rosie doing?" asked Sarah. "She is doing well. Very good. Her hair grew back and she gained some weight. We're still going through 3-month checks, but so far so good," I replied. "I'm very happy," Sarah said. We chatted some more and finished our coffee before I left. Sarah and I hugged one last time. I knew this would be the last time. When I turned to leave, I saw that Mike wanted to say something, but I just walked past him to the door and left. Rosie and I, well, we're doing great. We're doing more together now than ever, and our love life is as good as ever. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.